I'm here in Las Vegas. We are at QlikWorld 2023. I have the pleasure of being joined by Randy Krauss. Now, Randy is an executive director at Merck Co. Randy, thank you so much for making time to catch up with me. It's great to see you.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, I've got a number of things I want to walk through with you, but before we dive into that, I wonder if you could just give us a 30,000-foot view of kind of your role and the remit that role entails within such an enormous organization, because Merck as an organization is one of the largest pharmaceutical brands or companies in the world. There's enormous parts of the organization, but you're part of it in your role. Give us a bit of insight into what that role remit entails.
Yep, so I'm executive director of a group called Metrics, Analytics, and Performance within our global clinical trial operations group.
Okay.
Our role is to provide tools, insights, to enable us to see our portfolio, our studies, and our processes, how much we're doing, how well we're doing it. It's purely operational.
Fantastic. Well, that's the best place to be, because then budgets are not a problem. We're here in amazing Las Vegas. We're at QlikWorld 2023. Before we dive into some of the more technical questions I've got for you, what's your general experience been like so far this week?
Oh, it's great. It's good to be back in person with a lot of people.
Isn't that great?
Building the relationships with people you've spoken with virtually for a long time. It's good to meet them in person. And learning about everyone's journey. Everyone's journey is a little different.
Yep.
And we're taking bits and pieces of it, and hopefully we'll be able to add value to our organization.
In fact, to that point, a lot of people are saying something similar. You come, you meet the birds of the feather, you hang out with your peers, you swap stories and anecdotes, experience. And have you found that you've got a bunch of things you've learned from your peers this week that you can now take away and actually action yourself and put into practice?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of areas, storytelling, some of the new advanced analytics, and prescriptive and predictive analytics, all exciting stuff.
Fantastic. Well, that alone's worth a ticket to ride, isn't it?
It is.
Let's first just start out with your use of Qlik within the organization. We'll dive into the journey of how you got there, but what are some of the examples or use cases you've addressed with Qlik and the Qlik platform and technology?
Well, we've been able to really aggregate data from many data sources and create stories for all our end users to use to help them, provide them with insights to support them in their decision making across our portfolio.
And their day-to-day jobs, really.
That's right.
And I imagine unload them from that burden of having to clean data, aggregate the data, verify it, make sure they're working with real data, fix up dates and times and typos and capitalization, and actually get back to their actual job, their core business. Walk us through the journey over the last number of years, not necessarily in the context of the last 3 years of the COVID experience. That was a fairly unique thing, but over the last 10 to 15 years, all organizations, particularly the scale you're at, have had that problem with the data deluge. Walk us through the lead up to that. You got to the point where you realize we have not just a lot of data, we've got a frighteningly large amount of data, and we probably need to find some tools to help us with that.
Yeah, we have a large amount of data and a lot of data sources.
Yep.
And teams spend a lot of time going from source to source, pulling out information that they need. So we really needed a tool that could help us bring that data in from all the data sources and also tell a story, right, to make their jobs easier.
And I imagine, you got it from design, you've got the IT side of the business, you've got the operational technology, you've got design, engineering, manufacturing, transport, logistics, and a whole range of things. And underpinning that, you've got the data protection, data, locality and compliance and governance and all of that. Once you got to the point where you realized that, what was the process by which you came to realize that Qlik was going to be the platform you decided on, and how did you go about forming a relationship to make them your partner of choice, if you like?
Yeah, I had some background with Qlik before joining Merck.
Okay.
And then Qlik was actually here working with a couple of other groups within our organization. So it just made it easy and natural for us to jump in and work with them.
That saves you a lot of time on RFIs and RFPs.
Yep.
What were the sort of steps you went through once you got to that point where even though you've got a relationship there, what were the 3 to 5 sort of steps of bringing them in, explaining the challenge you had, going through maybe some trials and I guess lab testing and so forth, to then running a particular model or tool or whatever, building a dashboard, and then rolling it out? What were the key steps you went through so that our audience, who are probably in a similar position you are, where not just lots of data, but a deluge of data, they can't do it overnight. They've got to go through a series of processes to prove things work and then test them and then scale them. What were your key steps through that journey? And what period, well, so let's start, what period of time did that happen on?
We started our Qlik journey in 2019.
Okay, that's pretty recent.
Pretty recent, yeah.
And walk us through the big stages of bringing them in and describing a challenge and going through some design and trials. What were the big steps in that?
Well, we first had to get data ingested to our back end. So that's always identifying the data that you need from the sources you need.
Yep.
That's always a big step. Also working with our customers and developing those business questions.
Right.
What story did they want to tell? Right. That takes a lot of time. Also, of course, you need to do that first before you could get to the data ingestion part.
Yeah.
And then, aggregating it and picking visuals to tell that story that you're trying to do.
That probably speaks to the heart of a lot of what Qlik's about, because as we know from this week in particular, they've communicated very well. A lot of what Qlik builds as a technology stack, as an ecosystem, is based on that user feedback. So I imagine you've got the same thing where you've got the tools, you go out to the users and not only ask them what they want, but how do they want it, where do they want it. What was the pivot from sort of, where you were before to where you are now with regard to the tools you're using from Qlik? What was was it a eureka moment, or was it a sort of slow realization that now you're in a good place? What was the response like from your users when they realized they weren't running around with clipboards and chubby pencils anymore? They've got real-time data in front of them, plus analytics and predictive.
Right. The response was great.
Yeah.
And we continue to grow our user base, and they continue to go in and come in multiple times a day sometimes to get information that they need. It was really driven on content.
Right.
The more content, as we add content, the more it gets used by more people.
Okay. And then did you notice there was was it an overnight shift to just adopting it, or was there like a bit of a HR challenge going from this is how we've always done it to now you're introducing a new process? Because a lot of organizations, I don't know if it's the same for you, when they've got to make decisions over time, they slowly kind of build into it. But when you've got the data in real time, you can make real decisions. You often have to have a cultural shift to making that decision in real time and instant, data-driven decisions. What was that experience like for Merck?
I think it happened over time. It didn't happen overnight.
Right.
I think as people saw the value in it, they adopted it. I think we, as an organization, wanted to share the data with some of our external partners. So we've created a report that we wanted to give to them, so our clinical study sites could look at their progress, look at their performance in the clinical trial, and that just made it even more valuable. That added a lot of value to it.
In that transition, when the whole big data sort of wave came along, a lot of organizations had to create a vernacular and a language with which to actually even talk about this stuff, because they all wanted to be on the same page. And I know you did a lot of work around this whole data literacy challenge and creating a culture of data literate people. How did that come about? What were the early steps you went through for realizing you probably need to address the data literacy in the general population of the organization, and then how did you go about approaching that challenge?
Well, it's one that we're still going through now and working through it. I think there's a couple of steps where we're trying to give our team the basics in data literacy, about data, and then creating two other paths. One would be role-based training. This is the data that you use in your job. How can this data help you, and what does it mean? And then we're also creating what I call object-based training. So if you look at a particular type of object, a bar graph, a box and whisker, what does it mean? So you're not just using it in that situation, you could use that concept on that graph in another, we call it content areas.
What were some of the blockers you had to deal with? A lot of our audience is going to be in a similar situation, maybe not the scale you are, but through the organization, they're going to have blockers who don't like change. There's people concerned about risk, even maybe cost. What were some of the blockers that you came up against, and how did you sort of go about addressing those and moving beyond those blockers, whether it's technical or cultural or commercial?
Well, time is a blocker.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So everyone is very busy. Everyone has training plans that they have to complete to be compliant in their roles.
Yeah.
This is just one more thing for them to learn.
Okay.
And we had to really show the value add in taking the time to learn it.
And quick wins, if you're going to share 2 or 3 sort of examples of quick wins that you were able to take to the business, because we know when we roll out any commercial initiative or technical initiative, the board's always looking for, not just the business benefits, what are some of the quick wins that they can then help seed the next round of investment in transformations? What were some of the quick wins that you discovered and from your own implementation, but also then some of them that came from the users?
Yeah, I think everyone likes the idea that they could get information in a central place.
Yeah.
Right? And not only is it in a central place, but it's aggregated so they could see the big picture. Senior level users they don't have to drill down into the details. They want high level information.
Yep.
Other users need to drop down into the details, and they're able to do so. So in many cases, looking at country overviews or site overviews, institution overviews, people could see the big picture, and that became a framework for discussion.
Okay.
Right? And that framework from discussion really helped drive everything.
Yeah. And I imagine like many very large organizations, some very big sunk costs in infrastructure and IT in particular, you've got environments, you've got long-term ROI roadmaps for 5, 10, 15 years. Where are you at the moment with regard to cloud adoption, and particularly cloud adoption with the likes of your data aggregation into the likes of Qlik Cloud, using some of the Qlik analytics in there, and potentially even a view to using some of the ML tools? Where are you at in that journey?
We're learning.
Okay.
Right? So we're doing a lot of what I would call the dashboards and reports.
Yep.
And we're starting to evolve into the more AI type things, predictive, prescriptive analytics, really harnessing the power of data to help drive decisions even more.
I imagine when you think of an executive director role, operational, as you said, it must be pretty rewarding to be able to jump out of bed and know you're going to work to actually solve not just firefighting problems, but actually now kind of building a route and a bridge to the future. That must be pretty cool to kind of have a job where you're not just doing day-to-day operational stuff, but you're actually building a future roadmap that you can kind of inspire others to follow, particularly from our audience, saying, we have these very big challenges, we had a data deluge, we've created data literacy, this is how we succeeded in doing that, but you've also got the ability now to adopt more cloud, leverage some of these other technologies. That must be pretty exciting.
It is exciting. It's good to be able to support the teams and see them use it, but the best part about it, truthfully, is if the tools we create helps bring a clinical study to an end a day or two earlier, and enables us to get the treatment, vaccine to the bedside.
You're literally saving lives.
You're saving lives, and that's what counts.
Wow, well, what a wrap up. What a line to wrap up. Well, Randy, it's been so great to see you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and so forth. I think, I don't think anyone that's tuning in is going to be lacking any form of inspiration from what you just shared. And if there's any closing line I've had this week, the ability to do what you do when you get out of bed in the day and go to work and actually save lives, that's pretty amazing. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I hope you had a great week here at QlikWorld 2023 in Las Vegas, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
In the meantime, safe travels, and I really appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay.